I get discouraged for sure, and I will quit fighting at some point. And that point is when the first shovel of dirt hits the top of my box 6 feet down.
Hello and welcome to COS Indiana Live as we bring you Roundtable. The Roundtable segment is presented here every fourth Monday of the month at 7 p.m. We'll be focusing on education and discussion of the topics and challenges we all face as we use the Constitution to save the Constitution. Join us now as we bring you COS Indiana Roundtable with our MC, John Ackerman.
Welcome to COS Indiana Roundtable. I'm your host, John Ackerman. This is broadcast number 217 of COS Indiana Live. This month's topic is something called the Government 30 by 30 Plan. And before I tell you what that means, I want to bring the panel on. So let's get our panel members up on the screen, introduce them to you. First is our virtual programming coordinator, Dale Parrish.
Yes.
Welcome back, Dale.
Oh, John, hello.
Long time no see.
Yeah. Here's another one.
You're very familiar. Charlie Myers. I think this is your first time on the round table, isn't it?
Yes, sir. How you
Welcome,
doing?
Welcome, Charlie. Very happy to have you join us. And Charlie Cronow, you've been here before, and welcome back.
Thank you very much.
All right. Good to see you. And Diana is the State Communications Coordinator for COS Ohio. Welcome from our sister state, Diana.
Good to be here. Thank you.
And it's good to welcome a fellow Buckeye because I was born and raised in Cleveland up on the North Shore of Ohio. And Ken Kashuba, you're our State Communications Coordinator. Ken, you're the guy who put that funny looking black and white box up in the upper right-hand corner. Tell our viewers what that's all about.
Yes, I did, John, and I put it up there for a very specific reason. It's because we want to build a subscriber list as long as the Constitution. So we would like people to go ahead and get your camera out and bring it up there and focus and take a look at that QR code up close. It'll bring you right to a little form which will ask you to put in your name and your email address. That's all it takes. Simple as that. You'll get advance notices on our upcoming programs. You'll get highlighted information from different programming that we do, and we'll certainly keep you up to speed with what's going on here at COS Indiana Live.
Hey, Ken, that sounds great. So if I want to subscribe to this thing, all I have to do is scan that QR code and enter my name and email address, and then I'm a subscriber?
You're a subscriber, and you can even get, we'll even send you a copy of our monthly newsletter from COS Indiana.
Okay. Okay.
They'll really like that.
Well, that's a great addition to our screen.
We're trying to think of some other things that we want to do for new subscribers. So
okay,
we're going to be working on that. It's going to be exciting.
Enter them in the lottery. Okay.
There you go. Become a founder. Become a founder member of subscribers to COS Indiana Live.
Okay, very good. Well, I told the audience that our topic tonight is the Government 30 by 30 Plan, and I better explain what that is. The 30 by 30 plan was initiated in Executive Order number 14008 on January 27th, 2021, 2.5 years ago. The President directed the Department of Interior to develop a plan to conserve, quote, at least 30% of our lands and waters by 2030, close quote, in collaboration with the Departments of Agriculture and Commerce. That sounds okay, right? I mean, who doesn't want to conserve land and water? Isn't that part of what conservatism is all about? But wait just a minute. Here's a map of the United States showing that in 2020, 12% of our country, that is 289 million acres, was preserved for biodiversity. 12% of the country back in 2020. And the 30 by 30 plan calls for that to increase to 30%, a total of 729 million acres. Like they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Now, sometime along in here, Ken is going to post in the comments box a link to that you can click on later on to find out more information about this 30-30 plan. But that's it in a nutshell. And I want to go around the table and let each member of the panel chime in on how you see the president's 30 by 30 plan. And Diana, you're one of the newbies here. You and Charlie Myers are the two new ones, and you're our guest from out of state. So I want you to go first. Diana, how do you see the president's 30-30 plan?
I see the 30-30 plan as straight up communism. It's a land grab, which is what communism is, and that's what it is. It's also part of the larger kind of climate crisis type UN initiative, and I see it the same way. And it's a way to control people, a way to control the lands, and eventually nobody owns anything. That's how I see it. And if you need further proof, the UN, their convention on this issue is in China. Okay, it's in the article. There's buzzwords that make me nervous. Biodiversity is a word that makes me nervous. There's a lot of buzzwords that I think are sort of nebulous and confusing and make people nervous and scared. And this stuff is chock full. The information here is chock full of buzzwords like that, inequity, things like words like that. And this is very nefarious. And why would we answer to the UN at all? So I don't want to take up too much time. We'll let the gentleman answer too, but that's how I see it.
Thank you, Diana. I do appreciate it. And Charlie Myers, you're the other new member of the panel, so I want you to go second. How do you see the 30 by 30 plan?
Yeah, I certainly agree with Diana. I think skepticism is the initial reaction anybody should have, when the feds come at you with the do-gooder stuff, right? And I'm a lifelong hunter, and hunters are all about conservation. It's how we ensure that we can hunt indefinitely, that we can always be passing that torch on to subsequent generations. But with many issues like this, as a start, why is it a federal issue? Again, it's that do-gooder syndrome of they got to be doing something. And, so it's that classic devilish trick of smiling at you while, behind your back, they're stealing something away from you. So, and this is a tale as old as time, that they kind of point out a problem. Typically, more often than not, it's actually something that they started in the first place. And then they say, hey, we'll solve it. We'll take care of this for you. Just give us a little bit of power. And then typically they make that problem worse. So they can say, hey, we need even more power to fix this issue. So everybody look out for the 50 by 50 plan that will inevitably follow this one. But as we all know, once that power is given away, we'll never get it back. So this is precisely why the common interpretation of the beast from Revelation is that beast is government. It's an all-powerful entity that only has one interest in mind, and that's growing its own power, and it grows and grows and grows, and it never diminishes. It does not diminish, it only grows. So the question here is land better off under private control or government control? So I'm sure we'll talk about that for the rest of the time here, but needless to say, I'm very skeptical of the government when they claim to want to do something for goodness sake, because it should be us. It should be the people doing that good, not leaving it to them, not being lazy and just voting for the people who claim they'll do that stuff for us.
Okay, thanks. Now, Charlie Cronow, how do you see the 30 by 30 plan?
Well, I have to agree very much with what's already been said, is that, why do we need to have the government do the thinking for us? And this is definitely something where they are wanting to seize lands for the government and place it under government control. Um, if they wanted to do something for the people, they would try to start programs where people could make the land better for the like biodiversity. Okay, you can make things and like that, put things under the state's control where it belongs, and they can improve the land to get the same things accomplished without seizing it. And once the land is seized, what's stopping them from changing the purpose for the lands, like putting military bases or whatever, things like that. I mean, they could put bunkers underneath national parks for all we know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm thinking, I don't feel any better about the government taking over land than I do about China buying U.S. land. I don't feel any better about that. Dale Parrish, on my screen, you're the only man without a beard. So besides that fact, we will let you chime in. How do you see the 30 by 30 plan?
You're saying beard as well as on top, or just beard?
Yeah.
He's got eyebrows. So come on.
See, I can't.
Well,
grow
don't feel bad, Dale.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not alone.
Okay, a little levity goes a long way. Okay, Dale, your opinion on this thing?
Yes, I mean, I agree with everything that's been said. I just, the first thing that pops to my mind is the elite. It's another elitist attempt at controlling our society, our government, our way of life. I can't imagine going from 12% to 30%. And I know that there are some states out west where the government already owns 70, 80, 90% of the land.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's unbelievable how much land in some of the states. I'm thinking maybe Nevada or Utah or some one of our western states. The government owns some unbelievable percentage of the land out there. But I think it's just like Diana said. This is Marxism, communism, whatever you want to call it. It's further control, world control of our way of life, and we got to stop this. We can't let this happen.
Okay, Dale, thank you. Now, Ken, I always leave you for last because you're monitoring the viewer comments, and if there are any viewer comments or questions that have come up, you can bring them up at this point, or you can answer the question yourself. Your turn, Ken.
Okay, great. And while the chat room is a little on the quiet side right now, I'll piggyback off the back of what Dale was talking about, and even bring in another segment which a lot of people may have heard about, may have not. But he's talking about out west. And did you know back in August, President Biden, with executive order, claimed a bunch of land which was basically in and around Indian tribes and what have you, but he basically claimed it was part of the national monument, which basically excludes you from doing anything on that property. And the property happens to sit over, I think it's over 85% of our uranium supplies, uranium ground. So, I mean, by executive order. So they're slipping it in here and there. So why would we turn around and just sign away up to 30% to them to do whatever they please? So I agree with that. And we did happen to get one comment. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that up now.
Yeah.
And that is from our elite leader. Tipton. He says property ownership is an element of personal freedom due to the control of the individual over the land. Give that up? ?
The answer is no. Do not give that up. Thank you, Dale, our state director. Ken, I have a hunch why the chat room's a little bit on the quiet side. It's because, in spite of the fact that this was an executive order, the news media have not reported on it. And I think they will start reporting on it whenever the Department of the Interior gets around to posting their proposed regulations, then there's a period of public comment. And the media will pick up on it then, I'm sure, especially the conservative media. Don't look for the legacy media to talk about it at all, because I think they're in league with the government. But watch for it to come. Viewers, watch your news over the next few weeks or months, whenever it happens. The Department of the Interior will post the proposed regulations, and then the media will start telling you about it. But here, you're hearing about it first from COS Indiana Live Roundtable.
I agree, John.
Else, Ken?
It was covered locally, very locally, when he was there, obviously. But yes, we did have one other comment. I'm going to go ahead and put that up.
All right.
Cheryl Schottmeyer says, I personally don't acknowledge executive orders as legal. I believe our government doesn't have the authority to do this. Do you?
That's a good question. That's a good question.
Yeah. I think some executive orders might be legal and some are not legal. But this kind of executive order where you're confiscating property and setting it aside for government use, so-called public use, I don't see anything legal about that at all. It would take an act of Congress. It would take a law passed by Congress and signed by the president. So Cheryl, you hit the nail right on the head. A lot of what presidents have been doing in recent decades through executive orders has been illegal. Dale?
Yeah, we maybe ought to talk about this on a future roundtable. But if I understand right, an executive order was intended to be something the president could do for administrative purposes of the executive branch.
Yeah,
it wasn't to. Is this?
This is from Jerry Rowe. I didn't mean to cut you off, Dale, but
that's okay.
He's just saying executive orders that enforce existing law are legal. Otherwise, no.
Right. Thanks, Jerry.
I didn't think executive orders were intended to go beyond just the administration of the executive branch, but
exactly
they do obviously, but we shouldn't be. I don't think we should be treating them in that manner. So.
Correct. So remember, this is a roundtable of Convention of States, Indiana. And the question comes up in my mind, now that we have a picture of what the 30 by 30 plan is, and we've got an initial response from each member of the panel, why is this a concern for Convention of States? Why is COS concerned about the 30 by 30 plan? This time we'll go to Charlie Myers first. Charlie, why do we care about this?
It couldn't be an easier answer to your question than this is one of the three main goals of the convention, right? Term limits, federal jurisdiction, and what's the third one that I'm missing?
Spending.
And fiscal restraints. Yeah. So this is right up our alley. Federal overreach. I mean, it's already out of control, but this is just even more, right? This is the glass of milk coming with the cookie. So they want to rob us of more state land and therefore power. So it's painfully obvious why this concerns everybody here.
Wow, that might just be the answer to end all answers. Charlie Cronau, can you add to that?
There's not much to add to that. I mean, it's, as he said, it's directly stated in there. This is a clear example of government overreach, and I think a lot of things done, especially by this administration through executive orders, fall into that category. We have so many things that are just bypass Congress, which is, turning the table of the way the government's supposed to work on its head, and just, if you can't pass a law, get it done by executive order. And there's nothing to restrain that part of the federal government. So I mean, this is just one example of it, and it's something that I think can be fixed with an Article 5 convention.
All right, Dale, anything to add?
Not much more to add to what's already been said. It's obviously a government overreach issue, but I think it's a constitutional issue too. I don't believe this is constitutional to be able to do this. Certainly, certainly would be uh, against state constitutions, various state constitutions. So. The only thing I would add is the constitutionality of this in general, really.
You know what, Dale? I've read the Constitution, and I don't remember a word in there.
You haven't seen this in there anywhere, John?
About confiscating land from the states. I haven't seen a word to that effect. Diana, did these men leave anything for you to say? Why does COS?
Say.
Okay.
Yeah, I can tie just about any issue to Article 5 for sure. So this is easy. And it's absolutely what we do. It is what Convention of States can address. And that's why we need to do more and more about getting in front of people and bringing news like this and the news of the day and the news that's hidden like this to the forefront and tell people we can solve this. And here's how. And it's not hard to describe once you get them past the what Article 5, how it works and how it's employed and how we make it happen. We can write an amendment that can do this, and we can address overreach. We can probably write hosts of amendments regarding government overreach, right? Mm-hmm. But there is one that came to mind when I read these pieces on this 30 by 30 plan. In our 2016 simulated convention, someone, or actually it probably has come up many times over the years, but an abrogation amendment comes to mind. It is an amendment that, if employed, if ratified, would allow the states, probably by supermajority or maybe simple majority, the states could vote against any executive order, right? Because we don't have a vehicle for saying no to these executive orders. There isn't one. So we need one desperately, like we needed it yesterday. So an abrogation amendment, even if we had, honestly, if we had three, it would probably be one of my top three choices. We could say no to an executive order. We could say no to anything that was passed in Congress that the states largely did not like. In fact, it would contain them probably, because just by existing, it would contain the president. It would contain the legislature because of its existence. If we had an abrogation amendment that allowed the states, when needed, to raise their hand and say no, then we could thwart this. We need it. We need it. There are other things coming down the pike that we know our current government and quite frankly, other Republican presidents have done it too, and we need to do it. So we need the abrogation amendment. The only way to get that amendment, an amendment could allow the states to push back on any day it needs to, is an Article 5 convention that could write that amendment.
Okay, I saw two hands, Charlie Cronow first and then Dale.
Yeah, I think there was something regarding that. And I think there was also something that once an executive order was passed, the legislative branch had so many days to say that, yes, this is legal, and we want it to go. Otherwise, it would automatically be overturned because, if the two branches are fighting each other and the place of the people, as much as we can say that, the Congress says that, no, this isn't cool. They can overturn it right there without having to go to the states or anything like that.
Okay, thanks. Dale, your thought was?
I just wanted to add to what Diana was saying. Mark Levin wrote about this in his book, Liberty Amendments. And this was one of his recommended amendments. And he called for, I believe, a 3/5 vote by the states, and not only to overturn executive orders, but to overturn any law, any Supreme Court decision, anything. It would require, I believe, a 3/5 vote to overturn something by the states. It's very, very much needed, I believe. Yes.
Okay, that would really empower the states and be a step right back toward federalism, which is
Right.
one of the things we're all about. Okay, Ken, you've been monitoring the comments. You got anything to add to us?
We do. I'm going to add something, and then we're going to bring up a couple of comments. The thing I'll add is just a question: are you okay with your gas stoves being turned off? Being eliminated?
I'm not.
If so, I don't know. Here's a comment from our state director again, and this will give you some actual background history and some things we're talking about here. There's a lot of information at this particular website, and it is posted in our chat. So if you want to copy that down or copy and paste it somewhere, a lot of information on term limits, fiscal restraint, and the return to federalism is what you're just talking about. So a great website to give you some actual background and some figures and facts for that. And with that, I'll go ahead and bring up our next comment. Was from Susan Gervais. She says, what about executive orders that have already been enacted? Can they be reversed?
Yeah.
Well, we've seen that happen when one president comes, he reverses a number of previous executive orders. Yeah. Diana.
We could always write the amendment that says that we can do that.
Mm-hmm.
If it passes, we can do it.
Yep. Great question, Susan. Okay, Charlie Myers.
Just to expose some of my ignorance on the subject of executive orders, what is the basis of the executive order? Is that a constitutional power? Because I'm sitting here with my digital constitution open, and even just searching executive order, you're not going to find those words.
Not in there.
In the document. So at what point does this thing just come about that allows you to just be Mr. Dictator and like, I want Friday to be free ice cream day by executive order? Like, what controls that?
If I remember my history right, I think George Washington issued the first executive order, but it was within the bounds of the Constitution, and it was to give instructions to cabinet members and to departments of the executive branch. And it's only been maybe in the last 100 years that presidents have expanded that executive order to reach outside the executive branch and to do things like the 30 by 30 plan. Anyone else have some insight on that to answer Charlie's question?
But even in our state meeting, the state directors passed along the new Constitution, right? The updated one, the book that's about this thick.
Yeah.
Can you find it in there? That expansion of that power, would you didn't find it in there versus, just the basic?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. And Diana?
I have a guess. I'll bet you it was understood that anybody in office, the president especially, would behave according to the Constitution. It wouldn't step out of line. And it was probably one of those things that the founders, I don't know. I have not studied executive orders, but if the founders did not foresee that they would have a problem like this. Well, they should have, because they definitely worried about a growing federal government. But my guess is otherwise there would have been the checks and balances that were applied to the president from the other two branches would be working. And I don't know the vehicle for pushing back against an executive order. I don't know of one.
And as that person just commented, it was, executive orders would, should follow established law, correct? Mm-hmm. Kind of like what you just said, John.
Yeah.
Washington himself would just, hey, here are the orders from the executive within the bounds of established law. Whereas now it is free ice cream day. It seems.
Okay, Dale.
On our next broadcast, COS Indiana Live on October 30th, we have Debbie Stewart coming on. And Debbie is our constitutional expert. And she was asking me what I wanted her to talk about.
Now you know.
We have a topic now.
Yay.
We will have Debbie Stewart address executive orders on our October 30th broadcast.
Okay, so you all make a note of that and tune in.
Tune in.
Before we move away from this, Ken, was there anything else that you wanted to put on the screen?
No, just that I've posted in the chat and a link to the National Constitution Center that talks about Executive Orders 101. What are they and how do presidents use them?
Ooh,
It's a good
cool.
list of how our presidents over the past have used them. I believe it also says, I think it was Roosevelt that issued the most executive orders during his
Right.
presidency. But that might help a little bit. But I think Debbie Stewart coming on is going to be, I think we'll get a real punch there.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, we're about halfway through the roundtable, so let's take a little break here. We got a video we want to show you. It's one of the soapbox things by our good friend Gary Harbaugh.
Hi, I'm Gary Harbaugh. I'm a volunteer with Convention States here in Indiana, and this is my point of view. I'm going to give you a little update on the status of spending and the continuing resolution. That was a 45-day resolution passed a few weeks ago. Today is Wednesday, October 18th. Nothing has been resolved yet. The government has 15 departments that are normally funded by 12 appropriation bills. I think one of the 12 has passed, and their speaker's chair has been vacated. We have no speaker of the House, and so no new bills are going to pass until we have a speaker, and it's unlikely that the other 11 bills will get passed before the 45 days runs out. That's my best guess. And the reason for that is that there is a group within Congress called the Freedom Caucus. They would like to cut spending. On the other hand, most of the people in Congress probably really don't want to cut spending. And by not passing any bills, then they pass another continuing appropriation bill. And that means spending continues at 2023 levels, which are higher than what the Freedom Caucus wants. And so the other side gets their way, the other part of Congress. And we have, after all, the finest Congress money can buy. And I say that because most of them are bought and paid for by special interests who want bigger government and more spending. I also took a little study of Congress and spending and presidents going back about 100 years. I'm not going to go back for 100 years, but in the last 45 years, under presidents, Republican and Democrat, our federal debt, the total of our federal spending deficit from all the years, has grown by about 9% per year on average, regardless of who is in president. Republicans, Democrats, doesn't matter. Spending and our debt goes up about 9% per year. Unfortunately, our economy only grows at about 2% per year. I went back 20 years. It's really a little less than 2% per year. It has grown on average for the last 20 years. What that means is the total potential income that our government can take in really is only growing at about 2% per year, while our debt is growing at about 9% per year. When your debt is growing faster than your income, you have a problem that really cannot be solved with higher taxes, can only be solved by cutting spending. The simple math is that if your debt grows by 9% per year, it's going to double every 8 years. And if your economy is only growing 2% per year, it's not going to double until another 36 years passes. Debt is growing much faster than income. There's no way to fix this. About 100 years ago, we had a real crisis in America called the Great Depression. My friends, I don't have a crystal ball, but I look at the math and it tells me we're headed for another crisis. May not be like the Great Depression, but it's going to be a crisis of some kind because our debt is exploding and our income is not. That's the simple reality. And there's no way to put limits on spending by our Congress. They won't do it. As I told you, they're bought and paid for by special interests that want this spending. There is no spine, no backbone to cut spending in Congress. Yeah, there's the Freedom Caucus that wants to, but they're a small group within a Congress that's dominated by people who like big spending. So what has to happen is we, the people, have to use a tool that is in our Constitution. It was put there by the framers to allow we, the people, to regain control over our government. Using Article 5, we can have a convention, a meeting of representatives from all 50 states, a convention for proposing amendments. We, the people, can cause to be proposed an amendment that puts a limit on spending. I can't guarantee exactly what that limit's going to look like. Nobody can. Only that convention itself will make that determination of what it's going to look like. But I can tell you this, without action by the states through a convention of states, there will be no limits on spending and there will be a crisis. I don't want to see that happen. We have enough problems as it is without an economic crisis caused by runaway spending. My friends, I hope you will join me in supporting a convention under Article 5 for we the people to propose amendments to our Constitution. I'm Gary Harbaugh, and that's my point of view.
A very sobering thought and a powerful thought from Gary. Thank you for that point of view on that soapbox, Gary. Ken, that QR code really showed up. It shows up now, but it really showed up during Gary's talk. So remind our viewers and tell anybody who's tuned in the last 30 minutes what that QR code does.
Okay, folks, if you're enjoying what you're hearing tonight, the conversation, the debates, the information you get here, this little QR code up there in the corner, right above John's head and my screen. I don't know, it might be different than everybody else's screen, but up there in that corner, yeah, right there where he's pointing, that is a QR code that'll get you subscribed to our channel. And you won't want to miss upcoming information coming from us regarding upcoming programs. And I'm sure there'll even be a way for you to get back to us to maybe make suggestions on what you'd like for us to cover in future episodes. So subscribe today and share it with your friends if you've got people that would like to get a little more information than they're getting from the standard media today. Point them this way and we'll get them filled in.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Well, we've been talking about the government 30 by 30 plan, where the federal government wants to set aside 30% of the land in the United States by the year 2030. And we've talked about it, and we've told why Convention of States is deeply concerned about it, and why everybody ought to be concerned about it. Now we really want to roll our sleeves up and dig into it, and I want to ask the panel, what are the problems and pitfalls with this 30 by 30 plan? And this time, Charlie Cronow gets to go first. Charlie, what are the big problems and pitfalls?
Well, thanks. I think a lot of those have been mentioned already. Is one is assuming they do get it. You know, how are they going to get it? How are they going to enforce this? And once they would happen to get this, what's going to stop them from, or keep them from not misusing this land? Like once it's government land, they can do basically whatever they want. Like Ken said, it's like, oh, let's just seize this land for its mineral resources, and it's you can do all sorts of things behind closed doors. So I would think that's kind of one thing, leaving stuff for everybody else. It's like what's gonna stop them from changing what they say and doing something different with it once they've got it.
Okay, thanks, Charlie. That's a real good start. Dale, what do you have to add to that?
Not a whole lot, but what comes to my mind is who's going to control this? Who's going to monitor this? Who's going to, as Charlie mentioned, who's going to enforce this? And I think it's just the problem is we're going to have to relinquish a great deal of control to some other party, some other entity, and it's probably not going to be someone that has our best interest in mind. So it's just there's just all sorts of unknown issues are surrounding this whole concept. That's all I can say.
Too many unknowns, and those will be revealed when the Department of the Interior posts the proposed regulations, which I think are going to be scarier than Halloween. Yeah. Okay, Diana, your thoughts on that? Problems and pitfalls?
Well, there's pitfalls all over the place because it's government. It's a government idea and it's a UN idea. So first of all, we are not. This is a fear tactic. Like they're imparting fear, and it'll be very hard to dig out of that because once fear sets in, and COS, we know what that looks like. It's very hard to walk that back. They make it sound like we are losing our ground and it's moving, it's being developed so fast that we will have no green space left. And it is not a problem in the United States. That is absolutely false. In the article that I read about this, it is not true that there are satellite images. Our expansion and development of and construction is very much under control. We're growing, but all of our development is not all just tightly developed. There's lots of green space, that we are not in trouble, that the article that I've read, and it was the Heritage Foundation article that I was given before this for tonight for commentary, that it's not a problem. So, and furthermore, since when do we need to listen to the UN anyway? We are not obligated to comply to anything they say. That is not a thing that the United States does. We shouldn't be doing. No, we don't answer to them. If they worried about the rest of the world and they want a third of the world to control, our government already owns a third. So they want more than a third. So no, we're not going to answer to them, and we shouldn't. It's a pitfall to suggest that we should, because then when do you say no to that? So no, we do not get in bed with the UN, or we should be getting out of bed with the UN, I guess. There are other things in the works that Joe Biden is working on. A treaty about health, for the next pandemic or the next epidemic, and how governments are going to react to that. And it's the same thing. We don't need to answer to them. And treaties are not about how governments treat their own people. They're about how they interact with the rest of the world and other governments. So we don't do that. We don't do that. The United States did not become the greatest nation in the whole entire planet for all of eternity, forever, of the age, the best country, most successful country in the whole world ever, by kowtowing to a world governance. It's not a thing. So this stinks. It cannot happen. And as far as I'm concerned, we cannot pass a convention of states, our resolution and all the rest of them, that we need to get to 34. We can't do it fast enough. We need it now, right now.
All right. Thank you. That's a powerful statement. And Charlie Myers, what do you think?
Yeah, that's of course all true. It's that devilish trick I was talking about. You create a state of fear, and then everyone runs to Big Brother for safety. Come children, give me your freedom. I'll give you security. And then, you're lucky if you even get that. Once that power/land is taken, of course, it's never coming back. And as patriots generally regard that same government as inept. So, as Dale was saying, who's running the show once we hand this over to them. But on top of that, though, I remember a study. I don't have the study on me. Consider it anecdotal if you want, but the whole point being, who should be running the show? Because as we all know, the government's really only good at one thing, and that's blowing things up, basically, and then they just kind of ruin everything else. But so I remember this study about comparing the cleanliness of American schools and Japanese schools. The difference between them, ultimately what I found was that Japanese schools were overall cleaner, because they gave the responsibility of, let's say, a hallway would go to the students themselves, instead of having one unfortunate janitor walking around scraping gum off of everything, because that's incentives. We all know incentives matter. So if the kids, the people, let's say, are in charge of the land, the hallway, whatever it is, they're more likely, there's more pride and ownership. They're more likely to keep it clean. But when the incentive structures are set up so that it's like, oh, the janitor, oh, the government will take care of it, whatever it may be, it typically goes to hell, let's say. So I was kind of curious going into this about, I thought, well, okay, with something like that, who owns something like Central Park, right? So this is Wikipedia. So take it as you will. But Central Park is owned by the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation, but has been managed by the Central Park Conservancy since 1998 under a contract with the municipal government in a public/private partnership. Digging a little deeper into that article, the Conservancy, that private entity, was born out of a community concern during the park's rapid decline in the 1960s and 70s. The 1975 New York City fiscal crisis left Central Park a virtually abandoned dust bowl that residents came to view as a dangerous, crime-ridden space. So the moral of the story being that when government runs something, it just ends up nobody really cares for it because everybody assumes that somebody else will take care of the problem. But when private ownership comes in, just like all of us, I'm sure we all take care of our homes, right? And if somebody came into your yard and threw their bag of Wendy's in your grass, you would either, maybe beat them up first, but you would then throw that away. You would take care of the land that you own. And that's because incentives matter.
Very good.
And also that we need to get people out of large cities because everybody in cities assumes that the whole world is a concrete jungle and they're unaware of all the flyover country where it's like, no, there are trees out there if you look for them, people. There is green land. Not everything's a disgusting concrete jungle like, I lived in Chicago forever and everybody thinks the whole world is Chicago. It's not. Get out of the city, go touch grass.
Great. Okay, Ken, last but not least, what do you have?
Yeah, I just say, I look at that again and it says, the nation's lands and waters need to be conserved. And yet they won't define conserved. And I think all of us here and most viewers probably are old enough to remember the definition of if and where that came from. And if you look at the new wokeism Webster's dictionary, I mean, our terms are changing every day. So it would only take a week or so before they change the definition of conserved. So I find that very threatening and unusual by the government to go ahead and throw up a smoke screen like that. But we did have one comment that kind of piggybacked off of what Diane was saying, and I'll go ahead and throw that up about the UN. Our friend Susan says, if I can get that up there, all UN member nations signed on to achieve the goals of the Agenda 2030 plan for economic, social, and environmental sustainability. And I'd add after that, when is it time to kick the UN out of New York? I think we need to send them somewhere far away from them, the states.
I'm sure we fund them.
That's my opinion.
We've got to be the main funders of the UN. I'm sure that we're the heavy hitters there.
I think we are. Yeah.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
Disgusting.
Susan, you just darkened my day by putting that little tidbit out there. But it's good to know. So thanks, Susan. I'm not upset with you at all. Okay. Well, I've got one more question, and this is the fix-it question. What can we do to stop the 30 by 30 plan? Okay. Dale, you're first.
Well, my standard answer to this question, whenever it comes up, folks, is we need to call a convention of states and propose amendments that would counter anything like this. Because otherwise, it's not going to happen, folks. It's not going to happen in Washington, D.C. This is something that we're going to have to take control of at the state level, and that's going to require a convention of states. So, that's my pat answer.
No, but it fits. Can't argue with that. Diana, there must be some other things that we can do to stop it. What else?
Well, that was my answer. That's always my answer. I mean, we either want to defeat communism, understand communism and Marxism and all this all of it. We have to understand it and agree as a nation as that it's not what this country wants. And we need to fight back. And we need to find enough people to do that. And we need 34 states to sign on to the resolution, to the Convention of States resolution. And we can push back on these things in a lot of things, not just this.
Yeah, but this is just one example of what we need to.
I don't know that I can come up with another way. I don't know how to stop an executive order. if, like I said earlier, if the abrogation amendment were sitting there and were part of the Constitution as an amendment, I think it wouldn't need to be employed all the time. It would always be a threat to the legislature, the U.S. legislature, and the president, and maybe a little less so the Supreme Court, but it would affect all of them, and it would keep them in line, knowing that, well, that's not going to fly with the states. They're not going to let us do that. And maybe it would prevent ridiculous executive orders like this one. I don't know, but I can't think of another way to push back without the whole nation just being up in arms over it. But when it is part of that climate sort of movement at the UN level, and that's where this came from. It's part of the climate crisis. It sits under that, and people are afraid, and they believe it. They believe that our land is going to be gone. Like, the population's getting smaller by a lot, okay, but they still think that the land is disappearing and it'll be gone, next week or something. So people are so easily frightened, and
that's true.
I mean, short of finding a really good way to educate the people, but I've been trying to do that. That's our job. We're communications people. It's hard to do. It's hard. So
okay. Well, thanks, Charlie Myers. Any more ideas to add to this?
I have one, but before that, just to add to what Diana was just saying, it brings to mind Michael Crichton is by far my favorite author, and he had this excellent book just before he passed at too young of an age, called State of Fear. I don't know if anybody's aware of it, but it's it really lines up with this, where it specifically had to do with climate change and how that's, you create a state of fear. And then, because an example he uses in the book, and it is a fiction book, but it's in all of his writings, he would just throw in tons of facts as he's doing it in this, fictionalized, like Jurassic Park or something as an example. But he talked about power lines and how for a long time people thought there was a state of fear regarding power lines, that living in a house underneath power lines would give you cancer and all kinds of, horrible diseases or ailments. And that turns out that's not true at all, but all this money was spent in order to bury the lines or move them or whatever. But it all comes about from a state of fear that typically isn't true. And the book is specifically about global warming, and he lays out the charts, he lays out the facts, and then uses a fictional entity that is taking advantage of that state of fear in order to generate millions and millions of dollars. So I highly recommend it. But beyond that, I think my fix would just be a continued education on just the difference between federal power and state power, because as we all know, history showed that in the wake of World War II, people stopped saying, I'm a Hoosier, and it became more, I'm an American. And that's a great thing. But then this is where it kind of has led people to this understanding that they kind of see just government as all the same thing. It's all the same thing, or at least that the feds always trump the state's power, and educating people that that's not the way it should, because now it's every single social issue has to be a federal issue, be it, gay marriage or abortion or whatever, as opposed to leave it to the states. And then we can all get along a lot better, because you don't need everything to apply equally everywhere. If you want cannabis in your state, go ahead, move to Colorado, but keep it out of Indiana, because it kind of smells really bad.
Okay. So. I like your sense of humor. Charlie Cronow, anything to add?
Yeah, just something real quick about the executive orders. Just like right now, all we have, as we said, regarding ways to enforce them, yes, there's supposed to be, I was doing a real read up while we were doing the video, and that yes, they're supposed to be in line with the Constitution and to execute laws, not create them.
Yeah.
And Congress has the power to overturn them by passing legislation that would invalidate it, but the president can veto that. and then Congress has to have a 2/3 majority to override that, which is nearly impossible to get that veto overridden because of the political problems that are in it, unless you have a super majority within Congress.
Right.
And right now I think we're talking about conserving and preserving the nation, and I think what we've got is it's like where people are up in the tree cutting the trunk off beneath them. They don't see what's going on because they're living in the country, but they're not seeing how what they're saying is destroying it at the same time. So let's conserve the nation and preserve it, but we need to do it in a way by looking at the big picture and not looking at it just through the eyes of the people who want to gain it for themselves.
All right, thanks. Ken, can you wrap it up?
I can. To me, yeah, it's just a power grab. But I'm going to go ahead and throw up a comment, I think, which will throw out something that we can talk about as far as how we can stop it. And Sue Gervais says we need to have more conservative social media sites like this one to get the word out.
Yeah. Okay, Sue. I like it. Okay.
Well, maybe Ohio should start one.
Okay.
We're all behind it, and we're all behind it.
We will be happy to help you in any way that we can. Okay.
We'll do our own 30 by 30, 30 states doing 30 podcasts by 2030 or hopefully sooner.
Good slogan. Okay. We need to run with the slogan.
I like
it. Well,
30
it's good
petition
to end.
signers in 30 days.
Yeah.
Good to end with a chuckle. Kind of shines the light on a very dark subject. So thanks for that, Charlie. And I want to thank each member of the panel for your contributions. And that wraps it up for this roundtable. Here we want to show you now a conversation that I had with our state director, Dale Tipton, to tell you how you can get involved with Convention of States. Indiana needs you.
Subscribe.
Talk to the audience about how they can become involved in Convention of States.
You bet. There's an effort that we've had ongoing for a while where we're communicating through links that deal with recruitment. As an organization, we have a lot of positions to fill, and positions have to be filled by volunteers. And if we're going to become citizen activists, which we really have to do to make a change in our government, people need to take positive steps to do things so that we can turn this ship of government around. And in Indiana, for example, we have 100 House districts, and we appoint what we call a district captain in each one of those districts. And in this particular link, this is a direct appeal for people to volunteer to become district captains, whereby they would be tasked with being the liaison between the people within that district and their elected representatives, their senator and their local representative. And then also they are responsible for spreading the word about Convention of States through various ideas, such as town halls or parade events or any kind of thing like that, where we can, mix in with the public, block walking, any number of things. And this allows direct involvement at a fairly high level where you're really your own manager and you will have all the assistance that you need, but the tools are presented there for you so that you can become an advocate for Convention of States and make a difference. And the other thing that's pointed out here more towards the top of the page is we are a past state. In February of 2016, Indiana signed the resolution. So as we try to recruit people, oftentimes we hear, well, you guys passed the resolution. It's been done a long time ago. What else is there to do? And there's a list here on this page of all of the different things, or many of the different things that we can do as individuals to support both the ongoing effort in Indiana and then how we can also assist neighboring states that maybe haven't passed the resolution yet. And so this is kind of the latest thing we've got. And this is ultimately the easiest thing we've done, because the application is literally at the bottom of the page that you can fill out to become a district captain. So it's a one-click deal and you're there. And we're hoping some people will sign up to join the COS revolution.
And that brings us to the end of this month's roundtable. Before I close it out, I want to give you our email address. If you have any questions about Convention of States or suggestions for future broadcasts, you can email them to us at raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. That's raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. Be sure to tune in next Monday, October 30th at 7 p.m. Eastern for our next COS Indiana Live. We're going to have Art Binhack, who's the state director of Wisconsin, and Debbie Stewart, our Indiana Constitution specialist, and Dale's going to make sure that she talks about executive orders and how to keep them constitutional. And our next roundtable will be on the fourth Monday of November. That will be November the 27th at 7 p.m. Eastern. And to close us out, here's a message from our national COS president, Mark Meckler. It's called "The Day I'll Quit Fighting."
I struggle to empathize with people who would give up. It doesn't make sense to me. Sam Adams said, for those of you who prefer safety and security over liberty, over the animating fight for liberty, I hope that you enjoy licking the hands that feed you. May your chains rest lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you are our countrymen. Like, do you understand that your kids and you are sentencing your kids and your grandkids and your friends' kids and your neighbors' kids to a lifetime of slavery and servitude, literally, of fear, of living in the darkness? But never, ever, never, never, never give up. George Washington lost the majority of his battles that he fought in the American Revolution. If you read his writings, if you read the letters where he was writing to Congress asking for money and troops, he was saying, we're losing. I don't have the troops I need. I don't have the supplies I need. Did he quit? What about the guys on the beach at Normandy? Like, what did they do? Did they just quit? Oh, there's, a lot of guys are dying around me. It's really bad. It looks really dismal. Those cliffs are huge. Machine gun fire raining down on us. And it's too hard. We should just quit. Thank God those people didn't quit. If they had, where would we be? I get discouraged, for sure. And I will quit fighting at some point. And that point is when the first shovel of dirt hits the top of my box 6 feet down.